Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. U.S. military posture in Europe is back in focus and under renewed strain after President Donald Trump floated potential troop cuts in Germany, Italy, and Spain following disputes tied to the Iran war. Now, the remarks land amid already volatile NATO dynamics and renewed questions over alliance cohesion and burden sharing. Now, they come just days after a high-profile visit by King Charles, which aimed to mend relations. We're now joined by Scott Lucas, Professor of American Studies at University College Dublin. Good to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Sasha.
So let's do this sequence by sequence. First of all, the spat between Germany and the United States, very personal between the Chancellor and Donald Trump. What do you make of his call to what he's considering? I think Trump has said he's studying and reviewing troop reductions in Germany. How serious of that do you think that is?
Well, Donald Trump has said that every year since his 2017, at the start of his first term. Whenever he gets miffed with the Germans or just wants to whip up a little bit of anti-Europe sentiment, he has a go that the Germans are ripping America off over automobiles, that the Germans aren't grateful for what the U.S. does for them in terms of defense, or just simply that they're being rude to him. Nothing new there. What is new here is the chain of events this week that led up to this, and specifically it comes from Chancellor Merz. Because when he spoke to students at the start of the week, he said quite honestly and quite correctly that the Trump administration has no exit strategy in the war in Iran, which is now going into its 10th week. And Trump got upset with that because, of course, Trump wants to portray, even as he doesn't have a clear idea what to do next, that he is going to have total victory in this. And so when Trump gets upset, then he just pulls out this threat again. The reality here is that NATO is still in place. U.S. military commanders will still be working with Germans there. U.S. intelligence agencies are still working with Germany. There are still, I think, around 35,000 American troops in Germany, notably in areas such as Ramstein. So, no, with Trump, I always treat this as noise until I see some actual real planning from within the administration.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, this is noise perhaps on one level, but nevertheless, it seems to be getting louder. I mean, just in the same sequence, he's also now said something, I think a reporter prompted him, what about Spain and Italy? They haven't been supportive of you. And he said, yes, probably in terms of reductions of troops from the United States in those countries. So again, is this, again, just noise? Is he playing to a domestic audience? Is it temporary? It's hard to tell, but what do you make of also those criticisms against those countries?
This is just a sequel to what we said about Germany. The specific grievances that the Trump administration has is that Spain has actually denied U.S. overflights to carry out offensive operations against Iran. The Italians have denied American use of a key base to sort of move equipment around to sort of transfer through there for those Iranian operations. And because they won't support America's offensive operations against Iran, Trump lashes out. Indeed, one of the Trumpist officials said a few days ago, look, we have a memorandum here in the Pentagon. We're preparing to ask that Spain be expelled from NATO. Well, no, that's not going to happen. What you have more broadly is an administration which thought it had a quick victory over Iran. Instead, what it got was not only Iranian retaliation against the Gulf states, the Iranians controlled this vital waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. And when they went to the Europeans and said, bail us out, send your warships there to help regain control of the Strait of Hormuz, European countries, and indeed every other country in the world except the UAE, said, no, we're not going to do that while there's a war going on. Beyond this, however, Sasha, and I do think this is the serious point here, beyond Trump's noise, there are other officials in the administration who want to undermine the European Union. They want to support hard right governments taking power in Europe. Those officials include the Vice President, J.D. Vance. It's actually watching them that I think is more important. Will Vance and others actually pursue a policy beyond the Iran war which indeed does try to undermine and even break up the EU and support these hard right administrations while denouncing Europe over issues such as the approach to health and safety on social media platforms or the approach to immigration.
Interesting point that you said. I mean, this is something that Donald Trump and MAGA has done for a while to try and forge those links with MAGA-aligned far-right parties. But also, I think we've observed now with criticism coming towards Italy. I mean, Giorgia Meloni, that was considered a closer ally, a friend of Donald Trump. That relationship is now strained. I'm just curious about this. I mean, in the policy, do you see now Europe coming together more? Is that a trade-off here now that we're seeing a more united European NATO? I mean, we've been talking about that, but is this ultimately better for NATO, or is that too soon to tell here?
I think the fundamental point here is that we're at a historic moment, that because the Trump administration does not believe in alliances, including with Europe, that international system we've had since 1945, you can't go back to that. Friedrich Merz has said that. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has said that. Alexander Stubb, the president of Finland, has said that. And what's interesting about Giorgia Meloni specifically is you're absolutely right. I think some would have considered her to be hard right as she made her ascent to power. But when she came into office, she's been very pragmatic. She's been very pragmatic in being very supportive of the EU, not threatening to leave it, in contrast to other hard-right politicians like Matteo Salvini. She has also been very supportive of European security and Ukrainian security. That has put her at odds with Trump. So what you're seeing is this in a wider context, that Meloni is sort of seeing Italy's future within Europe rather than being part of this hard-right bloc. And I think you're seeing this across most countries in Europe. I think there will be a challenge in Europe, in Germany, I should say, facing the hard-right AfD, which is very vocally supported by J.D. Vance. I think there's a question about what the National Rally does in France, whether it tries to cooperate with the Trump folks. And I think importantly, I think we have to see if the Trumpists succeed in getting the Reform Party into power in the UK. But at the highest level, you've seen a EU, which sometimes moving too slowly, sometimes being frustrated, as it was in recent months by people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, actually pull together with financial and military support for Ukraine in the immediate crisis over Russia, and pulling together in terms of looking at its longer-term economic, military, and diplomatic strategy.
Mm-hmm. But, and also at the same time, we're hearing these, like, as you said, this is just noise at the moment by Donald Trump. We're seeing if this actually becomes policy. But if it does, do you reckon that, I mean, one of those documents, I remember from some months ago, he said that he wants to forge closer ties with countries like Poland and Central Europe. Do you see restructuring more of those troops potentially going over to more of the eastern flank with Poland, maybe the Baltic states, or would they be sent to the Pacific? I mean, we're speculating here, but where could you see a trade-off here?
Well, first of all, the broad point, and that is, look, what you're actually saying is that Donald Trump is willing to jeopardize not only European security, but American security by pulling out of these bases. You know, America needs these bases as part of its global operations. So the idea that they help themselves by pulling out of Spain and Italy, well, it's sort of like cutting off your nose to spite your face. Now, the Baltic states, who I think have emerged at the forefront in their support for Ukraine, and indeed, I think are punching above their weight now within Europe because of that. Can you really see them saying, oh, we really want a closer relationship with Trump, giving his threats to walk away from our security? Poland, and your great viewers will know this very, very well, is in this interesting position between the current government of Prime Minister Tusk and the current president, who's been much more sympathetic in the past to Trumpist lines. But I think overall, again, that Poland's first priority is European security. Now, if the Americans want to contribute to European security by positioning Americans in Poland, and we've talked about the possibility of these bases, even a Fort Trump for years, that's all well and good. But if Donald Trump is simply talking about putting American troops in Poland on a bilateral basis while downgrading European security beyond that, no, I don't think even the president will see that as a good deal for Warsaw.
All right. At the same time, we've had a lot going on this week, including that high-profile visit, King Charles in the United States. 4 days of a charm offensive. Do you think, I mean, from the images we saw, the sound bites, it seemed quite positive. Do you think that the king achieved, let's say, a point for the UK and for Europe in his visit?
Yes, because he charmed Donald Trump while jabbing the Trump administration in the nose repeatedly. He did it very politely. He did it very humbly. But consider some of the takeaway lines from his speech to Congress and from the state dinner. He said that it was vital to have a U.S.-European relationship at a time when the Trump folks had been undermining it. He said it was vital for the U.S.-UK relationship at a time when the Trump folks had been attacking the UK government of Keir Starmer. He said it was vital to have a strong NATO at a time when Trump has been threatening NATO. He said it was vital to have action to protect natural resources. In other words, environmental action with a Trump administration that's been ripping up environmental programs. He even went as far to say that, invoking the English Magna Carta, that it was important to have limits on executive power with a Donald Trump sitting there who has tried to grab more and more executive power. And when we finally got to the point where he said, you know, the British in 1814, they did burn down the White House, and then mentioned that Donald Trump in 2026 wants a ballroom by destroying part of the White House. It was a charm offensive, which carried a bit of a wallop. The thing is, I'm not sure Donald Trump realized exactly what was going on.
And also, I think the U.S. apparently removed 10% whiskey tariff as well. I think Trump, to that effect, also said that the royal visit got me to do something that nobody else was able to do. So has King Charles now become the new Trump whisperer, in effect?
King Charles officially will always remain above politics. So you're going to have politicians and people, for example, like the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who will be doing this on a regular basis. But in terms of a specific event that was very, very important in terms of not just morale, but the idea of speaking up on certain issues that are of concern, not just to the US, but to the UK and Europe, King Charles is one of the few people that could have done this, because anybody else, Donald Trump would have said, wait, are you having a go at me? But because Donald Trump wants to be King Donald, he defers to royalty. And King Charles, who's been around for decades, he skillfully worked with that.
All right. I want to get your sense from another recent announcement from Reuters, apparently, that it seems to be that Donald Trump is now in the running as a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize of 26. I mean, this is something he's wanted a long time. I just want to get your reaction to that, if it is confirmed, the likelihood and just impact of that.
Oh, you'll know, Sasha, that dozens of people are nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. It just takes a certain number of signatures, high-profile signatures, to get him up there. He desperately wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He was passed over last year for Maria Machado, the Venezuelan activist. I can't tell you how the politics will work out with this. I will tell you that the official line of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee is always that they do not respond to immediate political concerns, that they look at this in terms of wider terms for a deserving recipient. So I can't guarantee it, but I think the wannabe King Donald might have to wait another year before getting that Peace Prize.
All right, and of course, we'll be, I'm sure, hearing a few more things from President Donald Trump about all that and much more. Look, but we'll have to close it on that note. Thanks so much. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Scott Lucas there, Professor of American Studies, University College Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you and your viewers.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary throughout the day. Goodbye.